sales are falling at McDonald's, the fast food restaurant most of us grew up with. Even rehabbing and adding latte machines hasn't brought in that much new business.
There is something happening to the restaurant industry right now that nobody wants to say clearly. 2026 is shaping up to be the year the cracks finally become craters. And these aren't scrappy little mom-and-pop operations running out of steam. These are household names, brands with thousands of locations, decades of loyal customers, and billions of dollars in revenue. And they are crumbling. Not because the economy sneezed and everybody caught a cold. Not because of one bad quarter or one unfortunate headline. They are falling apart because of decisions they made years ago that are now coming due all at once. Prices that kept climbing while portions quietly shrank. Menus that got more complicated while quality went in the opposite direction. Loyalty programs that collected your data but never actually made you feel loyal. And customers, real people, families trying to feed their kids on a budget. Working adults who just want lunch to not cost $20, who finally did the math and walked away. And here is the thing about walking away. Once people do it, they rarely come back. The habit breaks. The routine finds a new address. And the chain that used to be automatic becomes a place you drive past without thinking twice. That is exactly what is happening right now. And by the end of this video, you will know which 17 chains are heading into 2026 on the shakiest ground, why it happened, what warning signs you should know, and honestly, what it says about the whole industry. As always, everything here is my opinion, and for entertainment purposes. Do your own research, but I did mine, and what I found is going to make your next grocery run feel like the smartest decision you ever made. Let's get into it. Denny's has been a part of American life for over 70 years. Open 24 hours, 7 days a week, holidays included. The Grand Slam breakfast. Pancakes at 2 in the morning. It was the diner that never closed and never judged you for showing up in whatever condition you were in. For a very long time, that was enough. But heading into 2026, Denny's is shrinking at a pace that should alarm anyone paying attention. The company has already flagged the closure of hundreds of underperforming locations. Entire markets are being quietly exited. The ones that remain are fighting to stay relevant in a world where the 2 in the morning pancake crowd has a dozen delivery apps on their phone and no real reason to drive anywhere. The economic profile of Denny's core customer has also shifted in ways the company cannot easily solve. The diner demographic, working-class families, road trippers, people who wanted a real hot meal at a real table for under $15, is now the demographic being most squeezed by inflation. When your core customer is the person who can least afford to keep eating out, and your menu has not found a way to compete with fast food pricing, you are stuck. And Denny's is very stuck. The stores that are still open often feel tired, the kind of tired that no fresh coat of paint fixes. Sticky menus, inconsistent service, food that used to feel like comfort, and now just feels like a lot of sodium. That Grand Slam breakfast has enough salt to push you well past your daily recommended intake before you even order the coffee. Denny's is not disappearing overnight, but the trajectory heading into 2026 is unmistakably downward. And when the chain that never closes starts closing, you know something real has changed. IHOP used to share the same lane as Denny's, and lately the two of them are racing to see who can make the most confusing pivots in the least amount of time. IHOP briefly tried to rebrand as IHOP to promote burgers, which went about as well as you would expect for a place built entirely on pancake identity. The stunt got attention, but no lasting traffic. More recently, the parent company Dine Brands has been dealing with serious financial pressure across its portfolio. Franchisees are struggling. Rising food costs and labor costs are squeezing locations that were already operating on thin margins. And here is the deeper problem with IHOP in 2026. The all-day breakfast concept, which felt fresh when IHOP leaned into it, is now everywhere. McDonald's does it. Fast casual spots do it. Your local diner does it better and cheaper. IHOP is no longer the unique thing it once was. It is a mid-price sit-down restaurant in a world where mid-price sit-down restaurants are having a reckoning. And those stacks of fluffy pancakes loaded with syrup and whipped cream? Easily 900 to 1,200 calories before you even consider the side of bacon. Not ideal for a generation paying more attention to blood sugar and inflammation than any previous generation ever did. IHOP needs a reason to exist beyond nostalgia. And right now, in 2026, it does not quite have one. Olive Garden is an interesting case because it is one of the biggest players on this list. It is not a chain on the verge of bankruptcy. It is a chain in the middle of a very slow identity crisis, which can sometimes be more dangerous. Parent company Darden Restaurants has been shedding locations and redirecting investment towards stronger concepts. Olive Garden's same-store sales have been softening. The endless breadsticks and never-ending pasta bowl built a loyal base but trained customers to expect maximum value, which makes raising prices incredibly risky. And raise prices they have. A family of 4 at Olive Garden can now easily spend $60 to $80 before tip. For that price point, people start looking around and asking whether they could do better. Usually the answer is yes. The brand is also fighting a perception problem. Olive Garden has been the punchline of the casual Italian dining joke for years. Nobody goes there on a first date. Nobody takes a food-minded friend there to impress them. It occupies this weird cultural space where people feel vaguely embarrassed to admit they enjoy it, which is not a great spot for a brand trying to grow. The nutrition side is also genuinely alarming. Some pasta dishes push past 1,500 calories. The sodium in a single chicken Alfredo entree is enough to make a cardiologist put down his fork. Heavy, processed, and built for volume rather than quality. Olive Garden is not falling apart in 2026, but it is drifting. And drifting brands in a tough economy tend to drift one direction. Pause for a second before we keep going. Take a quick count. How many of these first 3 chains have you visited in the past 6 months? Be honest, let me know in the comments below. Because if you are drawing a blank, you are not unusual, you are the pattern. Hit that like button if you are seeing yourself in this, and stick around because we are just getting started. The next names get much more interesting. Buffalo Wild Wings used to be the unquestioned headquarters of sports watching in America. Wings, beer, 30 screens, and a table full of people who all showed up for the same game. It was loud and greasy and completely satisfying in that specific way. But heading into 2026, BWW is dealing with problems on multiple fronts. The parent company Inspire Brands has been managing serious debt loads, individual locations have been closing. The brand is also fighting the single most brutal trend in the wing world: price. Chicken wings became an expensive commodity during the supply disruptions of the early 2020s, and prices never fully came back down. So what used to feel like affordable bar food now costs $30 to $40 for a shareable order. At that price, people start making different choices. They order pizza, they stay home, they go to a local sports bar that does not have a corporate overhead attached to every basket of fries. And the quality narrative around BWW has gotten messy. The wings themselves have faced criticism for inconsistency. The sauce lineup that used to feel exciting now feels like a wall of options that mostly taste the same at different heat levels. For the health-conscious viewer, we should note that a full order of traditional wings with a couple of sauces and a side can easily land you at 2,000 calories and more sodium than you are supposed to have in 2 full days. The sports bar experience is not going away, but BWW is no longer the automatic answer when you want it. Chili's is doing something interesting right now. It has actually had some positive press recently, leaning into value messaging and social media moments. But do not let the good quarter fool you into thinking the structural problems are solved. Chili's parent company Brinker International has been dealing with long-term headwinds that one viral campaign cannot fully reverse. The debt load is significant. The store base is aging. The menu is an endless scroll of appetizers and entrees and combination plates that tries to be everything and occasionally nails nothing. The brand has survived by being reliably inexpensive, which works until rising costs make inexpensive hard to deliver. The Chili's model depends on volume. People have to come in frequently for it to work. And the demographic most likely to visit Chili's regularly is the same demographic cutting back most aggressively on eating out. Queso and chips, a full rack of ribs, a couple of sodas, dessert. You're looking at a meal that is heavy in saturated fat, refined carbs, and sodium levels that will make you drink water for the rest of the evening. Chili's is fighting. But fighting and winning are different things. We are halfway through, 6 chains in, and hopefully you are seeing a thread. It is not always one catastrophic moment. Sometimes it is just the slow accumulation of not being worth it, not worth the price, not worth the drive, not worth the next morning when you feel like you swallowed a salt lick. The second half of this list gets into chains where the problems are not slow. They are fast and they are serious. Bankruptcies, closures measured in the hundreds. Brands that made one decision that broke everything. Stay with me. Subway has more locations than any other restaurant chain on the planet. More than McDonald's, more than Starbucks. And in 2026, that size is becoming its biggest liability rather than its biggest advantage. Subway's franchise model has been under enormous strain for years. Individual franchisee profitability has collapsed in many markets. The gap between what corporate earns from royalties and what store owners actually take home has created a civil war inside the brand. Franchisees in multiple countries have pushed back, organized, and in some cases walked away entirely. Thousands of Subway locations have already closed. The sandwich itself has also become a cultural afterthought. The footlong is no longer a deal when it costs $11 to $14. The ingredients quality has never been the point of Subway, but now that price can no longer defend itself, the quality question becomes louder. Social media has not been kind. Subway bread has faced literal legal challenges over its sugar content in some countries. The tuna situation generated headlines that no chain wants to generate, and the endless cycle of promotions and limited-time offers feels desperate rather than exciting. Nutritionally, a fully loaded footlong with all the extras can surprise you. A 12-inch spicy Italian with extra cheese and sauce can push past 1,000 calories with sodium levels that should come with a warning. Subway is not dying in a single dramatic moment. It is hollowing out from the inside, store by store, franchisee by franchisee, and 2026 is when that hollowing becomes impossible to ignore. Dine and Pizza Hut is a concept that barely exists anymore, and the ones still hanging on are in genuine trouble. The pizza delivery and carryout model is under brutal pressure from every direction. Local pizzerias, Domino's and its technology advantage, Papa John's, third-party apps that let you order from anywhere, and frozen pizza that has gotten legitimately good. The locations that still have dining rooms are almost universally underperforming. Pizza Hut's parent company Dine Brands has been aggressively shutting down dine-in units for years and converting or closing others. The result is a brand that used to mean a specific thing: the lunch buffet, the red and white checkered tablecloths, the birthday party room, and now means almost nothing in particular. A delivery option you consider, and then probably skip for something faster or cheaper. The deep dish that made Pizza Hut famous is still there, but the experience wrapped around it has evaporated. And without the experience, it is just expensive pizza. A single personal pan pizza used to feel like a treat. A full order with stuffed crust and extra toppings for a family of 4 can now hit $40 to $50, and calorie counts that make a fast food burger look restrained. Pizza Hut is not gone, but the version of it that made people actually want to go there, that is essentially extinct. Perkins Restaurant and Bakery might not be a name you hear every day, but it should be on your radar because it is a textbook example of what happens to mid-tier family dining in a tough economy. Perkins filed for bankruptcy, not for the first time. The chain has been in and out of financial distress for years. The locations that remain are struggling with the same set of problems that are crushing every chain in this middle space. Too expensive for the budget crowd, not interesting enough for anyone else. The bakery concept, fresh pies and pastries, used to be a genuine differentiator, but when grocery stores have entire bakery sections and every gas station has a grab-and-go pastry case, fresh-baked pie is no longer the draw it once was. For families in smaller markets where Perkins might still be the closest sit-down option, the closures are genuinely disruptive. These are not optional restaurants for the communities they serve. They are the restaurant, and when they close, the loss is real. But the economic math is unforgiving, regardless of how important a location is to a community. In 2026, Perkins is in a fight it has fought before and not always survived. Here is a quick check-in. Which of these chains has already mentally left your regular rotation? Because if you are finding yourself nodding along and realizing that some of these places just sort of stopped being part of your life without you ever making a conscious decision, that is the whole story right there. That is how these chains lose. Not in a dramatic walkout, just in a quiet, gradual habit shift. Drop your honest answer in the comments. Which one did you stop going to first? And keep watching because the last 8 on this list include some genuinely shocking situations. Friendly's is another entry in the long, sad chapter of family dining chains that used to anchor communities and are now in various states of collapse. Friendly's has filed for bankruptcy multiple times. The brand has changed hands, shed locations, and continued to shrink with each passing year. The ice cream and family meal combination used to be a genuine draw, a place where kids were excited and parents felt like they were giving them something special without spending a fortune. But the economics of keeping that promise in 2026 are brutal. Dairy costs are high, labor is expensive. The dining room model requires a level of staffing that the chain simply cannot sustain profitably. The surviving locations are operating on fumes in many cases. And for families trying to be more intentional about what they feed their kids, a meal built around ice cream sundaes and fried entrees is an increasingly hard sell. The nostalgia is real, the reality of the business is not matching it. Denny's and IHOP got the solo treatment earlier, but Shari's Cafe is the version of that story that fewer people are watching, and it deserves attention. Shari's is a Pacific Northwest and Western U.S. chain, built on the same all-day comfort food model. Pies, breakfasts at any hour, big booths for big families. In 2023 and heading into 2024 and 2025, the chain was shutting down locations and dealing with serious financial strain. The story of Shari's is really the story of every regional family dining chain trying to survive in an era where their specific reason for existing has been commoditized. You can get breakfast all day at a fast food drive-thru. You can get pie from a dozen places. The combination that once felt unique now feels like a category, not a destination. Regional chains like Shari's often serve communities that have fewer dining options, which makes the closures harder to absorb. But sentiment does not pay the rent, and 2026 is not kind to sentiment. Village Inn has been running the same basic playbook as Shari's and Perkins and Denny's, and the results are similar. The pie-focused, all-day breakfast family diner model is not working at scale in 2026. Village Inn has been quietly trimming its footprint. Franchisees who are not making money do not renew. The brand does not have the marketing budget to compete with national chains. And in the markets where it operates, it increasingly faces the same impossible squeeze. Too expensive for the value hunter. Not compelling enough for anyone willing to pay a bit more for something better. The Village Inn pie slice used to feel like a reward at the end of a family dinner. Now it is a 300-calorie afterthought in a meal that was already stretching the budget. The chain is not in crisis today in the dramatic headline sense, but the slow bleed is undeniable, and 2026 is when slow bleeds tend to become something more serious. Dine Brands, the parent company of IHOP and Applebee's, deserves its own mention as a corporate structure that is amplifying the problems of both chains rather than solving them. When you put two struggling concepts under one roof and load the whole thing with debt, the weaknesses compound. Dine Brands has been dealing with investor pressure, franchisee dissatisfaction, and market share erosion across both of its major banners simultaneously. That is a difficult position to operate from. Cost-cutting at the corporate level often means less support for franchisees, which means worse experiences for customers, which means less traffic, which means the cycle continues. Watch this parent company closely in 2026 because the decisions made at headquarters are going to ripple through thousands of individual restaurants in ways that customers will feel directly. Logan's Roadhouse is the steakhouse for people who wanted the Texas Roadhouse experience, but ended up somewhere slightly less memorable. The peanut shells on the floor, the rolls, the casual American comfort vibe. Logan's parent company has been in and out of bankruptcy before, and the chain has never fully recovered the scale it once had. The locations that remain are fighting the same battle as every casual steakhouse in 2026. Rising beef costs that make it nearly impossible to price a steak meal affordably while still turning a profit. Competition from Texas Roadhouse, which has somehow maintained both quality perception and value perception simultaneously, which is the hardest thing to do in this industry. And an aging store base that requires capital to renovate, which is capital that the parent company does not have in abundance. A Logan's steak dinner with an appetizer and a couple of sides is a calorie and sodium event that will leave a mark. We are talking potentially 2,000 plus calories and sodium levels that your kidneys will be processing for the rest of the night. The honest question for Logan's heading into 2026 is whether there is a version of this brand that competes in the current environment. The honest answer is that nobody inside the company seems to have found it yet. Quiznos. Yes, Quiznos. If you have not thought about Quiznos in a few years, you are not alone, and that is precisely the problem. Quiznos peaked at around 5,000 locations in the mid-2000s. It went into bankruptcy in 2014. Then it emerged, then it struggled. Then it continued to shrink to a fraction of its former footprint. The toasted sub that was supposed to differentiate Quiznos from Subway turned out not to be enough of a differentiation to sustain a large-scale business. In 2026, Quiznos exists in a kind of limbo, still technically operating, still technically a brand, but with a store count that has fallen so dramatically that calling it a chain feels almost generous in some markets. The story of Quiznos is useful because it is a preview. It shows what happens when a fast food concept fails to find a reason to exist in a changing market and then slowly dissolves over decades rather than dying in one clean moment. It is the slow fade. And in 2026, the fade continues. And then there is this. The pattern you have now watched play out across 17 different chains some of the biggest and most recognized names in American dining, reveals something that the industry does not want to talk about out loud. The casual dining era, the one that brought you blooming onions and endless breadsticks and birthday songs from waiters who maybe sang off key but always sang, that era is structurally broken. Not damaged, not in need of repair. Broken. The economics that made it work, cheap ingredients, cheap labor, customers who had enough disposable income to eat out several times a week without calculating it, those conditions do not exist anymore. And the chains that are struggling hardest in 2026 are the ones that built their entire identity around conditions that no longer exist. They kept raising prices as costs climbed, but their value proposition did not climb with them. They kept offering the same menus while the cultural meaning of eating out shifted dramatically. Younger generations are not interested in the same dining rituals their parents had. They want different things from a meal out. Authenticity, something they cannot easily make at home or order through an app. An experience that is worth leaving the house for. Most of the chains on this list are not offering that. They are offering a more expensive version of what used to be fine, and fine, as it turns out, is not a sustainable business model. There is also the health piece, and I know some of you are tired of hearing it, but I would be doing you a disservice if I skipped it. The meals at most of these chains are built around a formula that was designed for a different time. Heavy on refined carbs, heavy on sodium, heavy on industrial seed oils and processed proteins and sauces, with ingredient lists that go on for 2 lines. The portions were supersized, before supersized was even a word people worried about, and for years none of that mattered much to the average customer. But something shifted. People are reading labels now. People are noticing how they feel after a meal, not just during it. Parents are thinking differently about what they bring home to their kids. And the chains that built their menus around volume and comfort and maximum flavor impact, regardless of what it costs your body, are now facing a customer who has simply changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, but undeniably. Your standards moved and these chains did not move with them. So what do you do with all of this? Here is my honest take. Stop feeling obligated to be loyal to brands that were not loyal to you. The moment a chain decided to shrink your portion, raise your price, and maintain the same mediocre experience, the loyalty contract was broken. You are not walking away. You were pushed. Stop treating nostalgia as a reason to keep going back. The Olive Garden of your memory and the Olive Garden of your 2026 bill are not the same thing. The chain that gave you birthday memories and the chain asking you for $80 tonight are 2 different businesses wearing the same logo. Start being intentional. Local restaurants with real owners and real kitchens and real stakes in their community are often better, often similarly priced, and never ever going to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, owing $1 billion to the same customers they were supposed to be serving. And if you are cooking more at home, if you are grocery running more than you are dining out, if the whole routine of the family restaurant night has quietly faded from your life, do not feel like you lost something. Understand what it actually means. You wised up. These chains made their bets. They bet that you would keep paying no matter what. They bet that the logo recognition was enough. They bet that the loyalty program points would keep you coming back, even when the food got worse and the bill got higher, and the experience stopped justifying any of it. 17 chains heading into 2026 on uncertain ground. 17 brands that had every advantage and squandered it. And one audience, you, that finally stopped pretending the emperor was wearing clothes. The restaurant that earned your money this week is probably not on this list. Which one was it? And more importantly, which chain on this list was the one you finally gave up on? Drop it in the comments. I want to know the moment you decided you were done. Because sometimes it is one specific meal. One price that made you put your wallet back in your pocket. One dish that came out wrong for the 5th time. One drive-through window where you sat there doing the math and realized it just did not add up anymore. Those moments matter. Share them. And if this video helped you understand why your dining habits have been quietly shifting, why the family dinner out feels different than it used to, why the old favorites do not feel like favorites anymore, hit subscribe and share this with someone who is still going back out of habit. We are watching out for your wallet and your health. No drama, just the truth. See you in the next one.